Hi guys, welcome to the podcast. Before we start, we just want to introduce you to our sponsor. Our sponsor is the Twitter handle @MugsNFL. They're a company that offer a range of custom items such as mugs, t-shirts, crewneck jumpers, and hoodies, all customized with your favorite sports player or your sports team. That can be any sport ranging from the NFL through to the NBA to UK sports. All you have to do for an extra 10% off your order is drop them a message on Twitter quoting our podcast, that is the Hardwood Hoops podcast, and they'll get 10% off your next order. Cheers and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Hardwood Hoops podcast. This is a very exciting episode with some big news, episode 32, and I'm joined by my co-host as always, Mr. Ben Jones. How you doing, mate?
Good afternoon. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Nice to have you back after you were busy helping the kids of the future learn their ways whilst me and CJ were talking draft nonsense.
Oh, yes. Well, it's my turn to talk some draft nonsense today, so I'll make up for it, I'm sure.
Decent. Cool. So, plan for today's podcast, we're going to go through some news, and there's only one article of news, which is very exciting news for any NBA fans. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the draft. I'll hand over to Ben, who's going to kind of ask me some questions about the top picks, and we'll go through the draft order, and then we'll talk about some other prospects that we like. So, let's go ahead, mate. We heard last week the NBA's plan to return has been kind of confirmed. They've tentatively agreed on a plan with some stuff still outstanding, but we do have a start date of the 22nd of December. Free agency is due to start a couple of days after the draft. They're just going to confirm that the dates next week. Shortened 72-game season to try and accommodate the Olympics in and a normal start date for the year after. They kind of want everything to be back to normal for next season after this one. Some sort of play-in tournament will still remain. The details kind of to be hashed out, but there will be a play-in tournament of some description. And then the other things are that less travel is still likely, but they'll do more series. So, for example, a team will go to LA and play both LA teams maybe twice just to get it over and done with to stop flying. And then they've yet to discuss some health benefits and health protocols for people's family and roster sizes as well if people get sick. But there's your basic news. How exciting. We're going to get a season, and we're going to get season soon and some Christmas Day games.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited. We've mentioned it before. So excited about those Christmas Day games. That's like a highlight of the whole year. Not only is it Christmas, but we get basketball at decent times. It's the bones of a really good plan, isn't it? With sort of 5 or 6 weeks to try and execute the finer details, which we know they can do. I know it's a different scenario to the bubble. That was, in a way, easier to plan than this is.
Yeah.
However, it's still a long season. They've got time to sort of work out kinks as they go, which, again, they did in the bubble, and they did it successfully. So I've got faith in Adam Silver and the staff he's got, and the way they'll approach this, the way they go about it. And what's most impressive is the way that they are working hand in hand with everybody, with the Players Association, with the arenas, with the staff, with anybody involved. It is a real team effort. And I think without that at the moment, it would be absolutely impossible to do what they're trying to do. So hats off to everybody involved. It's brilliant. It's exactly what we want, isn't it? As fans, it's a sense of normality in this absolutely obscene world at the moment. So, really excited about it. Really good for them.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said in terms of the league itself. It was an overwhelming majority. I imagine a couple of people that were against it would have been the teams that got to that final 2, final 4 sort of stage. But there's been so many teams and players that haven't played basketball in 10 months that we really cannot play a whole season based around 30 to 60 players when there's thousands of staff members that are involved, people that have not been able to go to work and that stay at home. For example, like coaches, they can't do their job. And I think mental health and the well-being of the game and financial implications of not starting this year, I think that they were right to agree the 22nd. We're both fans of the shortened season. Maybe we wanted to see it a little bit shorter. But if they're going to cut down on travel and kind of do a lot more what baseball do, which is a team will go to a city and play like 4 games in that city just to kind of get the games done in quick succession, I can see that 72 games works quite well. And for the European fans / players, obviously the Olympics is really important. People like Slovenia and Latvia, countries like that, they're players that very rarely, get to win an NBA championship. To go to the Olympics of your country and try and win a gold medal is very important. So I think that trying to fit that in is clever. And also, in terms of viewing figures, I think the NBA is very intelligent in knowing that if you have a NBA playoff series going alongside the Olympics and the series is 3-1 up and you've got the 100-meter sprints, most of America are going to be watching athletics because it's very well liked in that country. So yeah, I think everything's really good. I enjoy the plan. Gonna hear what more information they bring out next week. But yeah, very exciting. And I wanted to ask you, I haven't prepped you at all. Christmas Day is going to be about 6 to 8 games, so that's impossible to guess. But in terms of opening night, they normally have a back-to-back game, East and West. What sort of matchups would you like to see? It might be different this year. The Lakers and stuff would normally play, but I'm not sure if they'll give them an extra week or so and maybe cut them out the schedule. We haven't heard that at all. But what 2 games would you want for opening night if you could pick any 2?
I mean, you'd normally expect like previous champions versus either a rival or whoever they played in the final. So either a Lakers Clippers or a Lakers Heat. But like you said, a team like the Lakers and the Heat going so deep, maybe opening night, especially being on the 22nd, maybe they'll go for a couple of the teams we haven't seen for a while. Maybe like a Golden State Nets could be an interesting opener.
Yeah, that would be a good one. I'm interested to know if they do West for West and East for East, because we haven't had confirmation yet. The East and West are going to how much they're going to play each other. I was thinking, I don't know, maybe a Golden State Houston would be quite fun after all the battles, and then maybe a Bucks versus Nets.
Yeah,
that could be a good series. But if they go with the champions, I think we could see a Heat, maybe a Heat Bucks, and then the other game could probably be Lakers Clippers, is same as last year. So I think they might end up going Lakers Warriors, just to mix it up a bit.
Because then it's, like I said, it's so close to Christmas Day. What games do you save for the Christmas Day? So do you save that Heat Bucks, like a Lakers, maybe even Lakers Nets or Lakers Clippers Christmas Day?
Yeah, I think if they're doing East and West, they're gonna get Nets Warriors, Durant versus the Warriors on Christmas Day. I think if they do East versus West.
Yeah, nice.
I think they might do like a Mavs v Rockets, obviously same division as well, Harden versus Luka.
Yeah.
That'd be like a Christmas Day one, I'd think. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they do it, because only 3 days in between. So I know normally they play every 3 days anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue. But they wouldn't want to water down the Christmas Day viewings by putting the same matchup on twice in a week.
You'd even be happy to see maybe like a Nets, a Clippers Nuggets after the series they had in the finals.
Yeah, or Clippers Mavs after the whole beef that they had.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be fun. And you could even get a team like the Suns back involved, couldn't you? On Christmas Day, you could get, I don't know, Suns versus a Nuggets, or Suns versus Clippers. Something like that could be quite fun, because obviously they're a team that everyone kind of raved about the last few weeks. Yeah, I'd have to say, all I know is that we'll have some good games to watch on Christmas Day, and mainly they will start at midday in the UK, which is very much needed.
100%.
Cool. So that's our thoughts on the return plan. There's no other real big news. We've hit all the coaching news. So let's head on to talk about the draft then, Ben. I'm going to hand over to you here, because I think you're going to talk about the plans for what we're going to talk about, and then kind of get us started.
Yeah, so I've never really hid this. Like the draft and the college system is not something I am hugely knowledgeable about. I like to think my NBA knowledge is passable to good, as soon as I do a podcast about it.
I'll give you good to very good. I'll give you good to very good.
Oh, thanks, appreciate that.
Can't give you excellent, because then you'll slack off on the pod.
Yeah, I was fishing for a small compliment, but it's fine. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to use my NBA knowledge, and we're going to go 1 to 10 in draft order of the teams, and I'm going to tell you what I personally, I know there's other fans out there, maybe even you yourself might think differently, but this is from me looking at the rosters and looking at the teams and thinking about what holes does that team have and what do I think they need to push them a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to suggest the type of player that they might need to fill that gap, and you are going to look down the draft list and find a player to plug the gap, the one most appropriate to my liking, if you will.
Cool, sounds good. And if there's any that I think they might need something else, I'll mention. And then also I'll give some of them. I'll mention a trade possibility because there's a couple of teams I think that might want to trade. So that should be fun. So let's get started. Number one then.
So number one are the Timberwolves. They have got some crazy offensive firepower on their team, but what they massively lack is a defensive presence. So I think the Wolves need a defensive guard or wing just to help out Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell carry this team. So do you think, looking at the draft list, is there a more sort of defensive player out there that they could draft to help bolster their squad?
So the answer is yes. The issue is that they're not a number one pick. All the sort of players that are available for that sort of defensive mold, which I agree with you they need, because Cat and Russell are not known, are they, for their defensive ability? And you kind of need to add some defensive players around them. The problem with having this number one pick that everyone's been talking about is a lot of the top 3-4 prospects are very offensive minded. And a lot of them kind of either play similarly to Russell or play similarly to Towns.
Yeah.
So in terms of trades, I think they'll be desperate to trade out of this. And we'll go on to talk about the Knicks later, but I think the Knicks need to trade up to number 1 or number 3, which would be huge. I think they should do it, and they should draft someone that we'll talk about later. But in terms of who fits the Timberwolves, whether they trade back or stay where they are, for me, I would probably go with Isaac Okoro, who's a wing from Auburn. He's very, very good in defense, basically exactly what you said. He's good off ball. He's good at defending the pick and roll. He's very good at on ball against. He's a wing, but he guards a lot of point guards. If the other team's point guard is the best player, he can kind of switch on to them and guard them quite well. He's not a million miles away from someone like Robert Covington, Justice Winslow in terms of how he defends.
Yeah.
But the problem here is he's probably somewhere between 4 and 10 on people's draft boards. There's players that are like better. So for me, I would go with him for what they need. Their other option is a player called Killian Hayes, who's a French. He's a French guard, but he's quite a tall guard. He's 6'5", so he can play like the 3.
Yeah.
He would be the other option because he's got the other side of the game, which means he could probably be a number 1 pick. He's good at perimeter shooting. He's good at playmaking. He's good at driving to the basket. So he's a bit more of a project, but I think he's got the upside that a team would go, I'll pick him at 1. But Isaac Okoro is probably the best fit for that team. It's just whether they want to take a risk and pick someone who should be maybe 5 or 6 and pick him at 1. But like I said, I think they're going to try and trade up. So if they trade with someone like the Knicks, they'll go to number 8. And when they're at number 8 or number 5 with the Cavs maybe, there'll be a lot of more defensive-minded players that suit them. So don't be surprised if they trade out.
Cool. Yeah, like that. That's good. That's some good insight there. Because even though I have a limited knowledge, I've seen the draft prospects, and I know a lot of them are sort of the ones higher up are more offensively rated players, and there's a couple here where I feel like a lot of these earlier teams would benefit more from trading down, and some of the ones further down will benefit more from trading up. So, yeah, as we go through, we can talk about that and talk about potential scenarios.
Yeah, I just wonder if COVID would impact it. Teams, I think a lot of teams want to trade up and want to trade down, but I don't know whether they're going to have, as much. I don't know. A bottle is a word we use in England, but I'm trying to think of an American word that would fit. But I don't know if they'd have the courage to
They won't have the cojones.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm expecting a lot of trades because I think teams need to trade up and down in this top 10 that we're going to talk about. But I just wonder the impact of COVID and stuff, whether that'll stop the trades happening. But we'll have to see. Should we move on to number 2?
Number 2, the Golden State Warriors. Absolutely chock-a-block with firepower. What I thought, listening to our previous pod, really interesting statement made that Golden State could draft a similar player to what they have now, Tim Duncan style, and coach him up to be the next part of the dynasty, which, like, it sounds a bit dull to do, but in terms of long term, it sounds like an incredible idea. However, I'm not in it for this long term stuff. So, ideally, I think Golden State should again trade and get an experienced wing / more of a forward to help them bolster their squad. But in this scenario, they're not going to trade the pick for a player. So I think Golden State need to be getting a power forward or center that can be, again, slightly more defensive minded, that can maybe take some minutes from Draymond during the regular season, because we know Draymond is one of those players like Shaq before him, people like that, plays himself into the season and can look very weak regular season. To save him and to help defensively, just getting rebounds and getting the ball out to Steph and Clay. I think they need a more of a sort of a power forward or a center.
This is where I completely agree with you. Their biggest player, I believe, is 6'9" is their current biggest player. That's not a lot of size in the modern day Western Conference, with what obviously Dallas can bring with Porzingis, even though he goes on the perimeter, Nuggets with Jokic, and obviously LeBron and AD with the Lakers. So I do agree with you. I think they need a big. Which is why I didn't agree with the strategy of drafting LaMelo Ball, which is what you were talking about earlier in terms of the next Steph and Clay, even though he's not really like Steph and Clay, but he kind of is in a way. A year ago, if you'd told me the Warriors would draft LaMelo Ball, I'd have been like buzzing with that. That'd have been a crazy signing. He's 6'7", so he can kind of play 2, and Clay could play 3, and they could all rotate. But after seeing Russell with the Warriors and stuff, I just think that their backcourt is what their backcourt is. In terms of bigs, there's 2, and this is what I mentioned in our previous podcast. We have James Wiseman, big from Memphis. He is a true big, 7'1", 237 pounds, absolute huge wingspan, 7'6". And your other option is, I'm going to murder this name, Onyeko Okongwu. I know his surname is Okongwu. He's a little bit smaller, which is my issue. He's 6'9" again, so they're not adding any height, but he's 245 pounds, and he is a defensive big. He's very, very good at on-ball defense, very good in the paint. He's a very good rebounder as well, and he's a good shot blocker. And he's a little bit similar to like a Montrezl Harrell in terms of, his hustle up and down the court.
Yeah.
A lot of people compare him to a Bam Adebayo in his first year. You can't compare someone to Bam now with how unique he is, but the way he moves around the court, if you watch Bam set screens and run off the pick and roll, that's very similar to Okongwu. So if you're looking for more of a defensive big, then you go for him. And with the Warriors, whoever they want to take it to, they should take it to. They shouldn't worry about, this player is probably the 6th player in the draft. Because whatever you think you need, if you're the experts, you're the scouts, you're Steve Kerr, you just take whoever you want from the top 6 or 7 players at number 2 and just say, we don't need to trade back 3 spaces and get good value. We've got all stars. We just need to win. For them, I would recommend trading back to get 2 picks. So to move back again, like we just said with Timberwolves, they're in similar scenarios really with having stars. I think they should trade back and maybe pick up an Okongwu at 4, 5, or 6, and then maybe get a late first or early second round as well, just to have another go at picking a rotation player.
Yeah.
But if they stay at number 2, Okongwu fits what you want, but I just think they should take James Wiseman. He adds the size that you want, and he adds the rebounding, which you mentioned. But unfortunately, he's not a very good pick and roll defender. He's not amazing at defending other bigs. He's quite athletic and he can shot block at times around the rim, but he's not a very intelligent defender. So he fits the size of profile that you mentioned, but he doesn't fit that defensive sort of help Draymond out. He's very much more of a explosive offensive kind of big who runs the floor.
Yeah.
He only played 3 games in college, and he played incredible in those games. But who he played against were quite weak opponents. So for me, I think they should take James Wiseman. I said this in the other podcast. I love him. I'm high on him. Probably too high. He's a risk, but I think they can take a risk. But if they want a defensive big, they'll go over Kongwu, and I think they'll pick one of the two if they stay at number 2.
Nice, yeah, some sound picks. And like you said as well, if they can trade back slightly and get another pick, I think this is a really important year to maybe have those options for the picks. If you're trying to save money on roster spots, you might want to fill up with young players from the draft.
Yeah, I agree with you that they will be trying to trade that pick for an established veteran. But if they don't, I think trading back, that they're more likely, if a Kongwu's not there, to go for a wing to kind of replace that Iguodala mold. Someone who can just take corner threes and defend really well.
Yeah.
But pay him less money, pick him at number 10, number 12, whatever, and then get a second pick in the second draft where they can just add a cheap big. And if you look at the Lakers last year, they added McGee and Howard for like $1 million each. So there's bigs on the scrap heap in free agency if you need a big. So I think they would do well to trade back. But if they stay at 2, I want them to take Wiseman, and I'll probably buy a jersey with his name
on. Nice. Good commitment. That brings us on to number 3, the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, while you're there, this was a tricky one, and I'm still debating what they need because they need a lot.
They do need a lot.
My initial thought was maybe another centre because Bismack Biyombo is going to go at some point.
That was awful.
Cody Zeller is their best centre, and then they got Willie Hernan Gomez behind that. They are chocker with power forwards. So looking at it, going from there, maybe a shooting guard or a small forward could be the way forward for the Hornets, because they've got Nicholas Batum, but lately he's not been playing well. They've got some small forward talent, but it's not quite there yet. So maybe they need someone to fill that kind of shooting guard, small forward rotation spot, bring a bit of offense, bit of flair, something to put the Hornets on the map. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and the way we're doing this is kind of a mock draft, kind of not. And in this mock draft, the favourite to go number 1 hasn't been picked yet. He is much more of a guard. He can play point guard or shooting guard than he is a guard wing. But I think they would go with an Anthony Edwards here. Like you said, they want to make a splash. They haven't got a lot of talent. Anthony Edwards has been talked about as the favourite to go in the first 2 picks at the moment. I agree with most people that I don't think, even though the rumours came out yesterday that the Warriors like him, I don't think he fits the Warriors that much. And I don't think he fits with Russell much either. So in this scenario, if he's still there at 3, I think the Hornets take him. He's more of a scorer. He does like the ball in his hand, but him and Devontae Graham can kind of rotate that. And what they're both good at is they're both good at corner shots. They're both good at tough shots. They don't mind taking the 3. So if one of them has got the ball, the other one should be comfortable kind of playing off ball a little bit more.
Share the workload.
Yeah, share the workload a bit. You got, I think Terry Rozier still at Charlotte, I believe, unless I've got that wrong. That would be the only worry. I think you'd need to trade him as soon as possible because you would not want all 3. But yeah, Anthony Edwards. If what people think happened, that Minnesota or the Warriors trade out and someone else picks Edwards because he's got a high ceiling, then the other player I think they should go with that would kind of fit that mold would be a Devin Vassell. He's a wing. He's definitely a true wing. He's 6'7". He's got a good nearly 7 foot wingspan. He basically is a typical 3-and-D wing. He shoots the ball incredibly well. He works very hard. He's amazing on offense, amazing on defense. And I think he would work well with the guards they've got. So if Anthony Edwards is there, they would not take him. But if Anthony Edwards is gone, I could see them maybe picking someone like a Vassell up, who probably should go a little bit later. But a lot of the other prospects are guards, and I don't think they need a true point guard because they've already got 2. So yeah, I'd probably go Vassell if Edwards is gone, which I think he may. But rumours are that Charlotte are one of the teams that might trade up. Going with your first line of thinking, where you said they might want a big, the rumours are if they trade up, they're going to trade up for Edwards or they're going to trade up for Wiseman, who I just spoke about. I don't know if they should trade up because I don't know if the difference between these players is that great. A lot of Charlotte fans don't want them to trade up if you read draft Twitter, but there's rumours that they could trade up to 3 or 1, just give up a late second round pick or something, not give anything up too big, but just trade up 1 or 2 spots to get whoever they want as their number 1 pick. But we'll have to see. I fell out with Charlotte Hornets fans on the night of the draft lottery, so I won't upset them anymore. They can have Anthony Edwards at 3 if they want.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Terry Rozier's got another 17 million, or just under 18 million coming his way this year. And then he's an unrestricted free agent. So
that's got a Pistons trade all over it to me.
Yeah, it's a tradable contract, but it's still not helpful for them, is it, if they go drafting a guard? But yeah, like you said, that's up to Charlotte. That's Charlotte's problem.
Michael Jordan will probably make a splash with whatever he does. That's why I think he'd want to take Anthony Edwards or Wiseman, because they're exciting players.
Yeah, it makes sense under their sort of their ilk, if you will, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So let's move on to number 4, Chicago Bulls. Again, they've got a real mix of talent on their roster, and it's a lot of pieces that, if tied together well, could be really, really successful. What I think is missing here is a pass-first point guard, which would lead me to suggest maybe they trade up and go for LaMelo Ball. That was my thought here. I don't know how much you would agree with that. I think they've got some good firepower in Zach LaVine. Kobe White isn't a pass-first point guard from what we've seen so far, so maybe this will take the sort of pressure off him and allow him to just develop as a player and become that sort of scorer that he wants to be. And then they've got Lauri Markkanen is super, super talented. Wendell Carter Jr., really, really good up-and-coming center. So, yeah, like I said, all the pieces are there. I just think they need someone to provide the ball for them. So I think a pass-first guard would be their ideal fit.
Yes. Difficult fit. Anthony Edwards is gone. And if we're doing it as a mock draft style, if we're not, he is not your quintessential pass first. He's going to be a little bit similar to White, so he doesn't really fit that mold. LaMelo probably does fit that mold. He's a playmaker. He's got good feel for the game, helps others. But I would really worry about playing him and Zach LaVine together. I think you'll get some absolutely awful shots. They both are. He is not a million miles away off Zach LaVine, but with the ability of a much better passer.
Right.
Zach LaVine's quite big, isn't he, for a guard? But he takes bad shots. He likes the ball in his hand a lot, and they are very similar. So if you're going to trade LaVine, which I think they should do anyway, because I think he doesn't fit the time frame, LaMelo Ball would be the perfect guard for Chicago, and it would kind of excite the fans. I know that ticket sales last year and the year before went down. That's kind of a running theme in Chicago at the moment. A lot of people prefer the NFL to the NBA team because of the way the Bulls have played for probably 5 years. So for me, if you trade away Zach LaVine and you've got White and Ball as your kind of backcourt with Wendell Carter and I forgot his name now, Markkanen as your forwards, that would be a very exciting team. And the LaMelo Ball would get people watching you, and you can kind of see how he goes, but I think you can't play him and LaVine. So I agree with you. If they trade LaVine, he is the perfect fit. If you want to keep LaVine and you want someone else, Tyrese Halliburton, who's another guard, he is a very good playmaker. But the difference is he's very good at off-ball defense, and he takes a lot better shots than LaMelo Ball. So he would be more of a fit if you keep Zach LaVine. He gets often compared to, which is weird, cross between Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Steph Curry. He moves around like Steph Curry. He's very good at finding space. But when he has the ball, he's much more like Shea Gilgeous. He likes to get in the paint. He likes to work shots for other people. He's not as good as a three-point shooter as Steph was when he was in college.
Right.
But so for me, if they keep LaVine, which maybe they want to, like if they already know we do not want to trade LaVine no matter what, then I think Halliburton would be a really good pick. I think he would fit them really well, and he's got quite good size as well. He's 6'5". He's quite skinny, but he can grow into that. So he's a good size for a defensive player as well, because Kobe White kind of needs help on that defensive end. So Yeah, Halliburton for me. If you're going to keep Zach LaVine, I think Zach LaVine and LaMelo Ball together would be a disaster. It would be fun to watch
I was
sometimes.
going to say, it might make good TV though.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. Yeah, but yeah, for me, Halliburton. If you're going to keep Mr. LaVine, I'm not a big fan of LaVine, so I would vote to. I would agree with what you said that LaMelo is perfect, and you just find some way to trade LaVine. I've heard LaVine rumors to the Warriors and to the Knicks previously, and that seems like a move that the Knicks would love to just do randomly. So I'd be calling the Knicks and saying fancy a bit of Zach. But yeah, that's my thoughts on pick 4.
Nice. Okay. Here we go. Biggest team in the draft.
I was excited for this one.
It's the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Do not say point guard. Jesus.
Yeah. No, they've got those coming out the wazoo. So we're not going with a point guard. This team needs shooting. There's so many players that like to drive to the rim. One of their previous best shooters that are still on the roster is Kevin Love, who is going to go at some point. So if you can find someone to sort of potentially plug in there, like a forward that can shoot, or you don't. That's the thing. You don't want another guard that can shoot, or you don't want another guard. Full stop. So I think a forward that can shoot, like a 3-and-D guy, would be perfect for the Cavs. Is there anybody that fits that?
Yes, there is. Halliburton does fit that again, but he is very much built to be a guard, so we don't want to go there. Devin Vassell, who I mentioned earlier, the wing, who's a good perimeter defender, good perimeter shooter, he fits. And if Vassell probably will be there at this pick, if we're honest. I think even though the teams in 1, 2, and 3 need certain needs, I think a lot of them will pick Edwards, Wiseman, LaMelo in some order. And if that happens, then I think Vassell would be an absolute perfect pick for this team. Another good option. You go. Project between and 20, so they might not want to take that risk in terms of picking someone that everybody else thinks is like an 8 to 20 prospect by picking him at 5. So I do wonder if even they would want to trade back and build in some more capital. I'm not sure, but Desmond Bane would suit the exact mold you just said. He's a really, really good perimeter shooter. His off-ball defense is amazing. He's got good hustle. He doesn't need the ball in his hands, which suits when you've got 3,000 guards. But I think Vassell, if he's still there, is someone that they would look at if they want that shooting. If I was to say that they would kind of discard that shooting and just say, right, we want to pick best player available who isn't a guard, because most of their players, in terms of Drummond and Love, won't be there very long term. No. I like Denny Advia, who's a wing from Israel. He is a player that I disagreed about with CJ on the last pod again. He didn't rate him as highly as me. I'm a bit of a sucker for European players with my Luka and KP connections. And there's a lot of rumours that the Warriors like him at 2, and if they could trade back to 5 or 6, they would take Denny. He hasn't got the shot that you want. That's the issue with the pick. He's a very good playmaker. He's got good feel for the game. He's very good at scoring inside, and he's very good off-ball defense against wings. He's very good at tracking other wings around the court. The problem was the level he played at can be a little bit difficult to judge. It's obviously not the same as what some of these college kids have played at.
Yeah, sure.
But I like his ceiling for a team that the Cavs that maybe just want the best player available, but he does not fit the mold of that shooting. So if I was going shooting, I'd go Bane or Vassell for me. But do not be surprised. I think the Knicks, the Pistons, and the Cavs are prime candidates to trade up to number like 1, 2, or 3. And if they would trade up, I could see Cleveland taking one of the stars in brackets of the draft in Anthony Edwards or Wiseman, just to add some quality to that team. But
yeah, because Cleveland here have got some trade assets in Kevin Love, one of their 1,000 guards or one of their 100 centers. So there's definitely room for them to move, especially with a team like Golden State who need that sort of bigger presence somewhere. They could sign and trade a Drummond or a Thompson.
Love's just a player. Yeah, Thompson's an interesting one. But Love's just a player. I don't know where he's going to go.
No.
Does he fit next to? He probably fits quite well next to Cat, to be honest.
Yeah.
So Cat can still kind of go inside and get the buckets. Love won't really obstruct that. He can be more of a 3-point shooting forward.
Could be really nice for him to be back in with the Timberwolves as well, sort of a Kevin Garnett style full circle.
Yeah, I agree. He fits Golden State in many ways, but I think their team could be a little bit weak defensively. But he does add some shooting to them. But I don't know about the finances. But that'd be my opinion. I think Cleveland could move up or down in some sort of big trade. I think they might be involved in something big this offseason, which would be exciting for you.
Yes, love that. Love that talk.
Cool. Let's go on to Mr. Trae Young's team.
Number 6, the Atlanta Hawks. Biggest hole they have is they're always looking for that wing, aren't they? I think with John Collins and Clint Capella and Trae Young and those pick and rolls and that shooting, I think maybe, and the cap space they've got, maybe go for, again, more of a defensive forward if they can. If not, go for a scoring forward, in which place they can then sign a defensive forward with their cap space and use that to alternate. So I think they would go for the best forward available on the draft board.
Probably. That's going to demand a lot of minutes. It's big, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a difficult fit. I don't want to always talk about Devin Vassell because I think a lot of people need that wing, but he is also the sort of player that they could do with. Other options would be Killian Hayes, who I spoke about before. He's more of a two guard than a forward, but he fits that defensive style that you want, and he could play the three quite well. I think he would suit kind of with Cam Reddish in the forward roles, especially if they're going to play a lot of small ball and kind of put Capella as the only big out. He would suit. If you want more of a forward size, Patrick Williams is someone who I quite like out of Florida State. He's 6'8", so really good size, 225 pounds, pretty good shooter for someone who's that big. But what he's really good at is shot blocking, off-ball defense, and pick and roll offense. So for me, he would be a good pick, but we have the same issue again that he is more of that sort of 8 to 12 range. So it is, do you want to kind of reach a little bit at 6 and take someone who maybe shouldn't go at 6? But if you're the Hawks, you probably just do that, I think, for the best fit available.
Yeah,
my only worry
got
with
that money to fill the gap that they don't quite cover with this draft.
Yeah, exactly. The other player I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about wings, I think it was for the first pick, Isaac Okoro. I said earlier that my worry with him would be that he's the perfect player for Minnesota, but I think they wouldn't pick him at 1. So if Minnesota trade out and someone else goes at 1, like a guard, and Isaac Okoro is still there at 6, absolute perfect signing. We've already spoken about him, so I won't go into too much detail, but the playmaking he gives, whilst also being probably a top 3 defender in the whole of the draft, and he's 6'9", so he can guard the 3-4 quite well. Wow, he is a player that him and Vassell, whichever one is left here for the Hawks, I completely agree that's who they would take. It's another spot for Denny as well. If Denny Avey is still there, the Hawks could go with him. But I wanted to ask what your thoughts would be about Atlanta trading out of the pick, so giving someone else the 6th pick for whatever. And the idea of that is they've got a lot of young stars already, and do they want to trade for someone who's probably overpaid a little bit, but they've got so much cap space they could take someone on and get a veteran 3 or a 4 who's very good at defender, good glue guy, someone in that mold. Do you think that's something that they could do, or you think they're more likely just to add another young talent and kind of keep rolling with as many young players as they can get?
I think they're in win now, so I think they'd be open to trading, maybe get a first rounder for next year instead, and taking more of a veteran talent this year to sort of help coach those younger players and teach them how to win. It's still a really young team, although they're super talented. They've got enough cap space to like I said, try and trade for maybe a high first rounder next year, plus veteran talent, and still sign someone else to help them out. That's probably the road past the Hawks.
Yeah, I've seen rumours. He doesn't fit the forward idea, but he'd be very good 2 or 3. I've heard the rumours of a DeMar DeRozan taking along that sort of payroll. So he's probably slightly overpaid, you'd think, but the Hawks can easily afford him. And then they get that experienced player, someone who can score inside, not just take the three, but he's also not a point guard, so he won't take the ball out of Trey's hands.
Could be a really good fit.
Yeah, I think so. I think he'd be a good fit. I think they might go after Joe Harris to be a shooter. But yeah, I think they're a sort of team that could easily trade that six. But if they don't, I agree completely with you. They need a defensive wing who maybe can shoot from the perimeter as well. But they need people to defend when you've got Trae Young as your point guard. So Vassell and Okoro will be very, very good picks. Aside from that, you're looking at a lot of bigs and guards. And I just don't think a big or guard will play for the Hawks. So I think they need wings.
Yeah, cool. That brings us on to 7th on the board, the Pistons. I've got
everything.
two potential spots here because they don't need a power forward as it stands because they've got Blake Griffin in there. Shooting guard, they'll keep Luke Kennard in there. I think for them, it's going to be if Derrick Rose leaves, or whatever he may do, the best sort of point guard available. But the one that stood out to me is their best small forward, Tony Snell, essentially, which is no good. So the best small forward or point guard still available, I think the Pistons will go for.
Yeah, and if in this kind of style we've done it, LaMelo Ball hasn't been a first choice for anyone. So for me, that's the perfect pick. The Pistons need a splash signing. They're another team that, like we spoke about earlier, that are struggling with fans, getting fans into seats. I know at the moment no fans are going to be going, but long term, selling season tickets and getting people to tune in. LaMelo Ball for me, he would be your point guard. He'd run your offense. You'd have Kennard as your shooter, and then Blake, or if you don't keep Blake long term, whoever you build around, Christian Wood, for example, who they've got as their other forward at the moment, if they re-sign him. LaMelo Ball fits with all those players perfectly well. A very good playmaker. Like I said earlier, he's the best passer in the draft by far. He's a very good ball handler. His issues is his shot mechanics and his decision making at times. And he's 6'7". He doesn't weigh a lot for 6'7", so he'd have to put a little bit of weight on if he wants to kind of guard players that he should be guarding. So that fits the point guard mold. So does Tyrese Halliburton. I expect LaMelo to probably be gone, especially if there's any trades. I think he's the typical player that someone will trade up for. And if he has gone, Tyrese Halliburton may still be there, who we spoke about earlier. He would be a perfect guard for them. Killian Hayes, who we spoke about earlier, would be another perfect guard for them. And then one more I wanted to add would be Kira Lewis Jr., who's a sophomore from Alabama. He's a very fun guard. He's a little bit more like a Lou Williams sort of Ish Smith sort of size and type, where he gets to the line a lot. He drives past people. He pulls up a lot in the mid-range. He works hard on both ends of the floor. He's not a splashy pick, but he is a pick that would just work well if those two splashy guards and Halliburton and LaMelo and obviously Edwards earlier in the draft, if they're all gone, I think Kira Lewis Jr. is probably one of your better bets for that position. If you want a small forward, maybe someone that we haven't spoken about, that's going to be difficult at that place. That's the only problem. Tyrese Maxey is another player, but he's another guard. So for me, the position they're in, they're going to have to pick guard. I think all the wings are going to be gone. And the only other wing after that is a wing called Sadiq Bey. He plays for Villanova, but I don't see him going until about 18 to 22 range. So for me, I just think any small forwards they could pick will be gone. And we've kind of spoken about them already, the Vassells and the Okoros that we spoke about. They're all good fits, but they're either going to be gone or we've spoken about them a lot. So I think it's more of a LaMelo or Kira Lewis Jr. vibe if Halliburton's already gone.
I did miss as well that the Pistons do have that Seiko Doumbouya, who's a rookie them this year, that shows like massive potential in the small forward sort of the forward category. So he could be a real good option there going forward.
Yeah, there's rumours of LaMelo slipping, and if he does slip and he gets to 5 to Cleveland, 7 to Detroit, or 8 to Knicks, who we'll talk about in a second, they're going to take him. He has too much of an upside, and he's too exciting for a franchise that are really struggling not to take. And in our kind of thoughts, he hasn't gone yet, so I don't think Detroit could turn him down if he's there.
Yeah. Do you think any of those sort of top 3 teams could be tempted by a Derrick Rose or a Blake Griffin and offer something there?
I don't think that Golden State can afford Blake Griffin, but I think they would be tempted. Minnesota, I don't think Blake works with Towns as much. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think someone could work out a sign and trade with Detroit for Christian Wood, who's the forward player we talked about earlier. I think that would work. Yeah. But I think Rose is actually a free agent, so obviously he could just leave. Yeah, and I just don't see Minnesota, Golden State, or Charlotte wanting Blake Griffin. Charlotte are the only team that I think they could get them to bite with Blake Griffin and maybe swap picks. So Detroit come up to number 3 and pick LaMelo at number 3. That might be something that could happen if Michael Jordan likes Blake Griffin. But I'd feel sorry for Blake having to go from Detroit to Charlotte after being in LA for all those years.
He's just falling down the ladder.
Yeah, I think Golden State and Minnesota would love to have Blake if he wasn't on the deal he's on, but I don't think it's going to work. So I think Charlotte, if they could do some package, would work. Just in terms of Charlotte wanting to get more assets for the future. Yeah. But yeah, I just think Detroit might struggle to move anything unless they're offering future picks or they chuck Luke Kennard in a deal with someone, which they might not want to do.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to the Knicks at 8. Again, I found this really tricky.
They've got a lot of young players in random positions, haven't they?
Yeah, to try and pick out what or where they might need a gap sort of fit. What I settled on was a centre because there are only 2 true centres of Mitchell Robinson. And then Taj Gibson, who in my eyes is a power forward, and he's also 35 years old. So
they do love Mitchell Robinson there.
Yeah. So maybe a backup big for minutes to help Mitchell Robinson out. But I know this is one of your favourite teams to follow, so I thought you might have a bit more insight on this. So in my eyes, a backup centre, but also let me know your thoughts.
So one of the better trades this year, because I don't like him, is Mr. I forget their names, Marcus Morris, I think it was. The Knicks traded him to the Clippers just before the deadline, and they got a first-round pick.
Yeah.
So the Knicks actually have number 27, and number 27 is where I think they take a swing and they go for a backup 4-5, someone who can play both. Mm-hmm. And they've also got, I don't know if it's 1 or 2, they got one early. They got the 8th pick in the second round as well. So I think one of those 2 picks, they pick a backup center for sure. And they probably pick a backup center power forward who can shoot. There's one player I've got in my mind who I'll talk about later, who if he's available, they should snap up, and it'll be like a funny remake of the Porzingis draft. He's very similar to Porzingis. So for me at 8, they don't go there. They need shooting. They need shooting quite badly wherever they can find it. And this is the team for me, ironically, someone who can't shoot, that I think they should trade up and just go hell for leather and trade up and pick LaMelo Ball. And if they can't pick LaMelo Ball, I really, really like them adding Killian Hayes, who we spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
So for me, my first point of call would be they need to trade up, or they need to trade this pick to the Thunder, which is crazy, and they need to trade for Chris Paul. I think they need a point guard to start. RJ Barrett needs to be your 2 guard. Frank Ntilikina has proven to be more like a wing now. He's grown in height, and he's just not a true point guard. Everyone thinks he is, but he plays like a wing. So for me, they need a point guard. So we've spoken about a lot of the point guards already, in Halliburton and LaMelo, who I think they should just take the risk and trade up and pick. But if they've gone, the player that I wanted to talk about here was a player called Tyrell Terry. He would not be a splashy pick, and you'd have a lot of Knicks fans probably being upset. But he's very, very good 3-point shooter. He works hard on both ends. He's a little bit undersized, but when you've got RJ Barrett and Frank Ntilikina, who are very big for guards in the roster, I don't think you need a big point guard. He's still obviously a lot bigger than like a Trey Young, so we're not talking that level. He's still 6'2" with a decent wingspan, but he's very slight, so he'll struggle in the defensive end. But he works very hard. He's a very, very good shooter, and he kind of plays a little bit similar to like a CJ McCollum. Where he can get in and kind of get the mid-range shots that he wants. But if the ball gets kicked out to him in the corner and he's open, he's also going to hit a three. So I really like him. He's probably got the best shooting range of any guard in this draft. But unfortunately, he hasn't got the size. But I don't think the Knicks should worry about that if they're going to stay at 8. I think Tyrell Terry would be a good pick. If Terry's not there and the other two guards we've spoken about, it's very hard for them not just to pick the best player available.
Yeah.
And someone who I'll talk about, who if he's there at 27, they should pick that he won't be there at 27, is Pokasevsky. We spoke about him in the draft. He plays in Greece. He's a Serbian big. He's 7 foot with a 7'4" wingspan at age 18. But the problem is he's 7 foot and he weighs 200 pounds, Ben. He's the skinniest 7 foot I've ever seen, but he's basically Porzingis light, to be honest. He moves like a wing. He passes like a guard. He's probably a better passer than Porzingis. But he's even skinnier than Porzingis, and he's played at a worse level as well, so the comparison's hard. But if there's no guards available and they're at number 8 and they just want to pick someone to add talent, I like Pokasevsky, and there's another player that other people like called Obi Toppin. But he is a true big, and like I said earlier, I think they love Mitchell Robinson. So I don't think they'll go with him. Their other option is a player that you may have heard of in the last podcast, is Cole Anthony. He's from New York. He trains in New York. He went to North Carolina. He was supposed to be the number 1 pick in the draft, but unfortunately had a really bad season with a really bad team. They had a lot of injuries. They had a lot of trouble with their coach, and they had an awful year as a group. But before that, he was supposed to be the next big thing. And like I said, he's from the area. He's a perimeter shooting point guard. He's 6'4". He's got a good wingspan, and he gets them down the court. So for me, that's another option if you want to take a big swing at number 8. But do not be surprised, I think, if they trade this pick somewhere for a star. But we say that every year with the Knicks.
Yeah, they'll probably end up picking somebody absolutely outrageous, whatever happens. So,
but yeah, there's a lot of rumours if he's there they'll pick Killian Hayes, but they picked a French point guard at number 8 before by the name of Frank Ntilikina, and it didn't work out very well. So that might stun a few Knicks fans, but I don't think he'll be there at number 8. So yeah, I think they'll have to go elsewhere.
Cool. Right, let's go on to 9. The Wizards, the old Beal-Wall combo. Yeah. They have a glaring hole on their roster when you look at positionings. Mm-hmm. That is in the power forward section. They have Ryu Hachimura. That is about it. They've got a lot of small forwards like that you can stretch to a power forward, like an Isaac Bonga, or if you want to play Davis Bertans as a power forward that stretches. But I think they need a power forward that can do the dirty work and get the rebounds. Someone athletic that can move about, be a defensive menace for teams that try and play against them. That would be my suggestion for the Wizards.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's option. I think if they believe in Wall, then that's there. I think there's other guards and wings they could go if they don't believe in Wall, but they're players that need the ball in their hand. So if you're going with the big, someone we just talked about a second ago, Obi Toppin. He's a very talented big from Dayton. I really like him, but he's a bit of a swing and a miss sort of candidate. He's a bit older. He's 22, which is good. I think he's got good experience of playing college basketball, so he's played a little bit more games than some of the other people that you describe as a big swing. But he is very, very athletic. He's a good rebounder. He's very good at scoring in the paint. He's a shot blocker. Like I said, he's 6'11". 6'9". Sorry, so 6'11" wingspan, but he's 225 pounds. So he's a big, strong power forward. He's probably slightly too small to be a true center, but like you said, that they need that power forward position. He's quite a good 3-point shooter for his size, but he didn't shoot many. Your only negatives would be that he's not a very good pick and roll defender. and John Wall's not known for that either. So he would really need to be taught how to defend. But in terms of rebounding, being that big, that presence in the paint, Obi Toppin's a very good one. Another big could be Pokaskevsky, who I just spoken about, but he would be much more of an offensive big. Like I said, a 7-footer you push to play the 4, but he'll get pushed around a lot. And then the other big I want to talk about is a player called Jalen Smith, played for Maryland. I really like him. He's a very good shooter for someone who's 6'10". He's 6'10", but he's got 7'2" wingspan, so wow. He is a big boy. His main kind of skills, aside from shooting for someone that big, is shot blocking and rebounding. He doesn't look like Kelly Olynyk, but he shoots a little bit like Kelly Olynyk. But his main strength, as someone who the Wizards fans will know, someone like a Thomas Bryant, he rebounds and he runs the floor very much like someone like that. So for me, he's not quite talented enough to go 9. But if you don't want to pick a guard, of which there are many guards, and you want a big, Jalen Smith might be the next best available if they've all gone. And I think he'd be a bit of a slight riskier candidate, picking him that early, but he's got the skills that someone like the Wizards could benefit from. So they would be 2 bigs that I like. And Desmond Bane, who I spoke about earlier, he's more of a wing, but he's very strong. He could play small ball 4. And he could kind of clean up some rebounds that Bertans might not get if he stays and shoots 3. So Desmond Bane and that team would be quite cool as well. But in terms of bigs, Obi Toppin and Jalen Smith are the ones for me.
Nice. Perfect. That gets us on to our last team of our top 10 through the draft, and that is the Phoenix Suns. Another team, as I get further down this list, I've struggled to think, what needs plugging, what needs sorting, because when you look at their sort of starting lineup, and their potential players off the bench as well, it's not a bad roster really. My only thought could be a point guard that is Ricky Rubio-esque that they could start coaching up and training up, because Ricky Rubio is getting on a bit and he doesn't really fit age-wise with the timeline of this team. That's about as far as I got with these guys, and I thought you could share your thoughts on this one and maybe do one that is Ricky Rubio-esque for me and one that you think fits Phoenix, unless you agree with me there.
Well, I agree with you that it's very hard to find a position with the amount of young players they've got. You don't want to kind of put another young player in front of another, do you, to kind of stop the gap? So yeah, that is the difficult part for this team. In terms of the Ricky Rubio stuff, I do agree. I think that another player you can take a swing and a miss. There was 2 prospects we spoke about earlier. One prospect earlier, Cole Anthony. He was kind of seen as the number 1 or number 2 pick in this draft if you'd have asked someone 18 months ago. And the other player that was spoke about in that circle was a player called RJ Hampton, who decided to go over to New Zealand and play there and not play college basketball. He has got playmaking potential that you could mold into a Rubio-esque. He's a lot more athletic than a Rubio. He's very quick. He's got very good hustle. He'll score a lot in the paint, but he's got the kind of one-handed whip passes off the dribble, the throw to the corners that a Ricky Rubio might have. So that would be a riskier pick that I would take if I was them, in RJ Hampton. And then another one, again, we spoke about earlier, would be Cole Anthony. He fits that mold as well. In terms of the Ricky Rubio style, he doesn't play like him, but he can move the ball a little bit like him.
Sure.
I do think, though, that they're a prime candidate to trade out of this pick for a veteran, because they've got cap space as well. I think similar to the Hawks that we said earlier, they could move that pick. And if they did move that pick and they move back in the draft, there's a player who I like a lot. He's a guard who plays for Barcelona in Spain, Leonardo Bolmero. He's Argentinian. Mm-hmm. Not just because he's non-American, but he has got a lot of the playmaking skills that a Rubio kind of possesses. So for me, if they didn't want to pick at 10, they wanted to let someone else pick this high, they could easily trade back and get someone like a Leonardo or an RJ Hampton in the 16 to 22 range. And that would work. There's another player called Nico Mannion, who's a guard out of Arizona. He's got good playmaking skills. He's a better 3-point shooter than people think, but you're not going to pick him inside the top 25 really. So that would be a trade back or one of your later picks. I'm just looking to see where else they pick actually. They haven't got another pick in the first round. They don't pick again. I think they'd pick in the second round. No, they've only got one pick, so this is where it wouldn't surprise me if they trade back with someone and they get to the 20 to 25 spot, and then they pick up a late second rounder as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some guards that I agree fit that mold, and if they want to take a bit more of a swing and kind of just go with more of a, I don't know, more of another offensive weapon that can kind of shoot the floor, I think Pokievsky is another option here. He's a player I really, really like, and I think they could go with him. But another one that we haven't really spoken about is Aaron Naismith from Vanderbilt. He's more of a wing player. He's a very good three-point shooter, very good hustle, 3-and-D sort of player, a bit like a taller version of Buddy Hield or maybe a Danny Green. He is a shooter who doesn't want the ball. Yeah, and I just think he might want to trade to pick.
Well, that would lead us perfectly into, given we've gone through these 10 teams, are there any players on the draft board that we haven't really spoken about yet that you think are ones to watch out for?
We've kind of spoken about everyone in terms of that top 20 sort of potential. Tyrell Terry won't get spoken about by a lot of people, but I do really like him. Killian Hayes and Danny Advia, who we spoke about earlier, I just think that they are boom or bust that could go number 1, 2, or 3, or they could go 15, 16, 17. I just don't know where they're going to go, but they're good players, but we've already spoken about them. So if I find a name that we haven't spoken about loads quickly, just to kind of update people on.
About Precious Chua on the one I've got.
Yeah. You mean the bit?
12th.
Yeah, he's a big. I've got him in the 24th, 25th sort of slot. He's very raw, but yeah, he fits anybody who wants a big. He's very energetic. He's very, very good rebounder, like you said with the Wizards, for example. He is basically Montrezl Harrell in terms of playing style. There's not much more that he offers than that, really. He's a very good pick and roll rim runner. He's a good rebounder. Problem is he's not a very good shooter, and he struggles defensively a little bit. He's basically Montrezl Harrell, but younger. Another player I want to talk about, actually on my list, is Jaden McDaniels, who's a wing. He's actually from Washington, funny enough, if they want to take him late. He's another wing player who's got perimeter shooting potential, almost like he's like a bigger Tyler Herro in terms of the way his body's shaped. Plays a little bit like Andrew Wiggins on the ball. He's a very good ball handler for a three player. I like Jaden McDaniels a lot. Yeah, I'm trying to find another player. There was one more I want to talk about, but I haven't written him down. I'm just trying to get his name up now. Where has he gone?
Yeah, because this is all, like I said, it's not something that I've massively followed over the years, but I can see why, it's hugely important to some teams that these picks they go well and they luck out. Well, being a Cleveland fan, when they picked Anthony Bennett and thought, yeah, go in places with this pick, and he was such a big bust.
Yeah, there'll be a few of them in the top 10. The other two players I want to mention was someone who mentioned last podcast, and Grant Riller, who I've now had time to watch. And then there's another player called Cassius Winston. They're both guards. They're both 22 and 23, so they're older than the average guard. But what they're very good at is they're going to be very, very good backup guards in the league. So any team in the late first round who's a winner that already has a point guard, whether it be like a Portland, for example, someone who's got the guard they want, but they want another guard, both of those players are very, very good options. They're good playmakers. They're older. They've played a lot of basketball, but they're both quite good at three-point shooting, which we kind of know that everybody needs nowadays. So I just wanted to mention Riller and Winston as late picks that people have going in the second round at the moment, but I wouldn't be shocked if the better teams move up and pick them in the first round just to get people they know that will not be bad. This is a draft where a lot of picks are going to be either great or not very good. And I think some of the best teams are going to want to pick players that they can trust, and those are two players that I like. But I had a quick question for you. We spoke about that top 10 there. Out of that top 10, how many of those picks teams will be picking, you think, where they're scheduled to pick? We've also got, like we said, Minnesota at 1, Golden State, Charlotte, Chicago, then Cleveland, then Atlanta, Detroit, New York, Washington, Phoenix. We've spoken about that. Basically, 6 of those 10, we don't ever want to think they might want to trade out or trade up or trade back. How many of the 10 do you anticipate picking where they are? Do you think we'll have much movement or not?
So another one of my bold predictions. I'm going to say half of these teams move. So 5 out of 10 move at
In
least
some
one
way.
position in the draft. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to that. I'm not going to be shocked if Golden State stays at 2. I think like someone at 2. Like we, there's not much that makes sense for them there.
No.
Yeah, and I think some of the other teams either want to make a splash or they want to add some veteran talent. But yeah, it'll be exciting. The draft is only 10 days away now. It's a week Wednesday. So I was telling CJ on our last podcast that the only problem is when I watch the draft, it'll start at 1 a.m. and finish at 5. Whereas when he watches the draft, it'll start at 8 and finish at 1. So it's a very different experience watching the NBA draft from the UK, I must be honest.
The other thing I did think about quickly before we start wrapping up is lots of talk at the moment about Devin Booker and whether he wants to stay in Phoenix. And he's completely open that he wants to play with Russell and Cat. You know, they're already on a team together. Is there anything you think the Timberwolves could do this year to make cap space for, when is it, 3 years time for when he's a free agent, or potentially build something up in terms of trade value to bring him over from the Suns?
For me, I honestly see, this is not me just being an ex-Knicks homer, but I see Booker as the Knicks prime candidate. Obviously, the front office in New York are now all from Kentucky, and they've got a couple of the coaches from Kentucky. So a lot of people think that they're going to just breed Kentucky players. Obviously, the 3 favourite players are the 3 you just mentioned. So it would not surprise me if the Knicks tried to get Booker over in the hope that in 2 years' time, when they've got obviously still got cap space, that Booker can convince Towns or Russell to join. More likely Towns, if I'm honest. I don't see Russell and Booker actually being a fit at all.
Oh no, I think they're a terrible fit together. They're just friends, aren't they?
Yeah, they are good friends. I'm just going to look at. It's a good question, actually. I'm just going to look at Booker's current contract.
He's got 3 years left. 31 million next year, 33 million the year after, and 36 million the year after that.
Oh, so he's 31 for this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if he's 31 for this year, there's literally no package that Minnesota could offer. They could
29 for this year, sorry.
29. They could, they're going to struggle, to be honest. They've obviously got cap space, so they could offer James Johnson, Jarrett Culver, Jake Layman, Josh Okogie, and whatever picks they want to try and get Booker. But if you're Phoenix Suns, I don't see any reason why you take that. No, you're obviously going to want the number 1 pick for this year. But with how well they did in the bubble and the progress they're on, I think you'd just be restarting again. So the only way they get rid of Booker for me is if they start to lose and then he kind of wants out. And that's not going to be before this draft. So I don't think Minnesota's got enough to offer him. That's why I think the Knicks will be best long-term. Because they can wait a year or 2 and wait for things to go wrong, and maybe Booker hands a trade request in, and not many teams are going to have $30-40 million in cap space in the mid-season. But if New York don't sign anyone this summer, they're going to have that money available for another 2 years. So that's why I think that they're more potential. But I just think Booker and Phoenix will go again this year and see how it goes after one more season.
Nice. Cool.
Cool. One question I wanted to ask you to finish up on is any of the main contenders who aren't Golden State. So we've got Brooklyn and Dallas who pick at 18 and 19. Philadelphia who pick at 21. Boston who pick at 14, 26 and 30, which is crazy. They've got 3 picks in top 30. Do you see any of them moving up to make a splash in this draft? Or because it's a bit of a weaker draft, do you see them kind of moving any picks to get someone big? I'm thinking like a Drew Holiday, who I spoke about in the last podcast.
I think that's what I think most bigger teams will do this year is use picks to potentially get veteran talent or more experienced players added to their roster for the coming season. Yeah, rather than wasting the pick sort of on hit or miss talent that they don't really need or want. So that's where I think they would go.
Cool. I would agree. Cool. I enjoyed that. That was good. Thanks for that, mate.
No, absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot.
Yeah, plans for the podcast is even though the draft's still coming up, we're gonna add another draft segment into the next pod as well, just for maybe me or Ben to talk about it in a different way. Maybe it's some second round talents or some hit and miss contenders. But then we're going to talk a little bit about free agency, aren't we, mate? Before that kicks off, to kind of preview that for the East and the West.
Cool. Yeah, with it all kicking off on the 22nd, we're going to have to get into team previews very soon.
Yeah, that's the plan. I think we'll do free agency. Then we're going to go through some team preview stuff. CJ's going to come back on after the draft to review it. Joe Holbert, who's a previous guest, is going to come on after free agency to review that and talk about the best and worst pickups. So me and Ben have just got a lot of free agency preview work to do beforehand, which should be fun.
Yeah, really looking forward to that.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll try and get another podcast out this week as well, and then we'll have 2 the week of the draft. So yeah, thanks again for listening, and thanks as always, Ben, for joining me. I enjoyed it.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Speak to you soon.
Speak soon.